So we're going to start the meeting in about a minute. If you can take your seats, please. We're calling the meeting to order. Please take your seat. Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order tonight. It's the May 6th Board of Selectmen regular meeting. I'm Bob Carlson, the first selectman. Also, we have Selectman Brett Mastriani, Selectwoman Nicole Porter, and our Admin Finance Officer Suzanne Thero. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, so what most of you are here for is actually agenda item number 8. That'll be about 15 or 20 minutes into the meeting. If you promise to be quiet, you can go up and look at the pictures on the wall or come over here and take something, but we have a few things we have to do first. But the agenda number 8, and I think it's probably 15 or 20 minutes in. Okay, with that said, are there any public comments on non-agenda items? So if you don't want to talk about affordable housing, if you don't want to talk about something that's on the agenda, you want to speak about it now, you're more than welcome to. Is there any public comment on non-agenda items? Okay, and none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve minutes from May 6th, 2025.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We just had the one set of minutes. Are there any comments by either selectman this evening?
I just wanted to make a comment about the Memorial Day Parade. I wanted to thank the Lions Club. I thought it was a great event this year, and I especially topped off with the new memorials in front. So thanks to everyone that participated. I know we thank them a lot, but the Boy Scouts, the Lions, and everybody involved, and Bob for your direction on that process. It really looks beautiful, and we've gotten a lot of compliments from a lot of residents about how nice it is, and I think it's just going to grow from there.
Yeah,
So
public
thanks.
works also.
Yeah, Public Works too. Sorry about that.
Absolutely agree.
And then Nicole?
I have nothing.
Okay. First selectman report and correspondence. I just have one correspondence that came in to me from John Gassion last week, and John asked if you could read it. So John, go ahead.
Good evening, John Gatcho, North Wesley Road. On May 3rd, around 9:10, my sister and I and her son were involved in a car accident at the address of 209 North Wesley Road. I'm writing this letter to let people know the amazing crews that responded. A situation that was already hectic. The North Stonington Fire Department and North Stonington ambulances rapid response was truly amazing. Truly an impressive display of professionalism in handling this situation. Logan and the North Stonington ambulance staff truly displayed compassion dealing with my nervous 5-year-old nephew, even giving him a stuffed animal for being such a brave young man. Then transporting me to the hospital to ensure my well-being. I have an extensive heart history. The level of professionalism, knowledge, caring, and all-around superior work ethic was truly amazing, ensuring I knew exactly what was going on with my treatment at all times on the way to the hospital. We see these people in our community all the time, and some may even take them for granted. Truly a great thing to have people who take so much pride in taking the welfare of our community so highly. I would just like to state what an amazing asset both organizations are to our community. Lastly, I would like to personally thank every one of them for their services they provide to North Stonington. Truly, some of our unsung heroes. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. I think if anyone's used our ambulance service in the recent past, and hopefully you haven't had to, I can't say enough about who we have as our ambulance service right now. They make 100% of the calls. They're very good at what they do, very compassionate, and we're lucky to have them. That's Logan Taylor is the chief, and all the people that work with them. So, John, thanks for bringing that to our attention. Next, IT service follow-up. So, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we decided as a board that we're going to try to go to a third-party IT service because we were hiring IT managers and it wasn't working out. We weren't having the success we had hoped to have. So we interviewed 3 companies. We settled on one called Star Computers. They're out of Niantic. And Suzanne, if you can just give us a follow-up on that.
It's been working so well. They have a great team of expertise on hand. Any issue we have, they resolve very quickly. So they've been doing an onboarding process where they're assessing all our issues and our network infrastructure. They visited the fire department and they're going to public works and all our buildings. And they're going to come up with a plan to fix our infrastructure and to utilize our equipment to the best it can. They have a help desk, they have a knowledge base, and they've just been wonderful to work with. They do most of the tickets through online and remote, but they do have staff on site like 1 day a week, and we're going to assess how often they're going to come on site, but it's working out really well.
And how would you assess where we are today versus even 2 weeks ago when it came to security and things like that?
Oh, they've locked down our email server. They locked down our firewalls. I would say that our data is probably 100% secure at this point in time. And I'm very confident that we're in a really good place. All our backups are happening and we're where we should be.
Yeah. Something that makes you happy, Brett, is we had a meeting today with Star and CEN about the fiber optics that you were, and we're really close to working with them on fiber optics, and it's a very inexpensive price, especially when you're taking away what we pay now with Comcast. But we worked on that today. We're going to work on that more tomorrow, and it looks like we can go in that direction and make it that much better. And that was what you had suggested a while back.
Oh, great. That'll be wonderful.
I know Memorial Day when we went to the firehouse afterwards, I've never seen Chief so animated and excited. He just had all positive things to say about his interaction with them, that they have done more in just a couple of weeks than, so really positive comments.
Okay, anything else before we get to agenda number 8? Okay, so we're to where we all wanted to get to, faster than I thought. Just a couple of comments before we start. So just to know where we are, if anyone out there plays golf, we just teeing off on the 3rd hole right now. There's a process to this. So anytime that a project comes in front of the Board of Selectmen, there's a process we have to follow depending on what the project is. As I said, we're basically teeing off on the 3rd hole. That's how far, that's how early we are in this process. The first hole was the Affordable Housing Committee had to come to the Board of Selectmen and say, hey, we have an idea. We think this might work. And Will, the chairman in a minute, I'll introduce him. He'll explain to you how the idea came about and why it came in front of us. Okay, the second hole was, we had to say, well, if we don't know if we can build it, because I know everyone's concerned with the wetlands, we need to have test holes dug. And I told them I won't accept test holes if they're not dug in the spring. No sense digging these things when we're in a drought because it's not gonna give us a true reading. So I made sure they were dug in the spring. And I want to legislate health district there to make sure they verified the results. It's just not an engineering firm telling us what they found. Again, we'll talk about that. So here we are on the third hole, which is tonight. And what's going to happen is probably what's not going to happen this evening. There's no decision making. We're not going to be moving anything forward tonight. What we're going to do is we're going to hear from the presentation from the Affordable Housing Committee on what the proposal is. Then I hope to hear from all of you on what your thoughts are. So our job tonight is to listen to what the Affordable Housing Committee says. I know we have KNSA also in the room if they want to say anything about it. And of course, the neighbors and the people that are concerned one way or the other, pro or con, what you want to say about it. Once we get all that information, we're going to take everything under advisement and at a future meeting. And this is not something that's going to be fast tracked. I'm not looking to put shovels in the ground before the summer's over. This could be an 8, 10 year and a half project. There was a project that was proposed by KNSA up on Winter Jog Hill Road last year. And I think that went about 8 months into hearings before we decided that we weren't going to go any further with it. So again, this is the early stages, and I promise you all that as we go through the stages, we'll make sure that you all know what's happening. As far as when there's a meeting, there's not going to be anything closed door, things in the open, transparent in the public. And we're looking for as much information we can so we can make a decision, not to approve the project, because that has to be done by the town, but to see if we want to move it forward. One thing I want to just mention is this is town-owned land. And people say, well, why did we pick this spot? And I'll let Will talk about that a little bit, but there's 3 positives about town-owned land. One is it's inexpensive land. If you can't build an affordable housing project, if you're spending a lot of money on the land, because then the houses aren't going to be affordable or the condos won't be affordable. Second thing about town-owned land is that it has to come in front of the town. If we're going to buy, sell, or lease town-owned land, we can't do it. We have to go to a town meeting, and you people, the town itself, has to decide on whether that makes sense or not if we want to do it. So that's another positive on why we want to use town-owned land. And the third thing is, when we have town-owned land, there's nothing on it. It's not putting any money into the tax base, which helps us all. By putting buildings on it, it becomes part of our tax rolls. And now we're getting taxes from this piece of land that was not giving us any taxes prior. So there's positives about looking at town-owned property. If it was not town-owned, it was private property. For example, you've got the Chucky's gas station, you've got the entrance to Meadowwood off of Mystic, and you've got that big white house. Suppose that a developer want to come in, buy that property, knock it down and put up condos, and it's not town-owned property. We wouldn't be having any meetings because we'd have nothing to say about it. But at least being on town-owned property, it gives you all the ability to come in and speak your piece and tell us what you think for or against. So that's where we are in the process. It's fairly early on. We'll make sure as selectmen that we get information out to you every time we're going to talk about this. And again, we're not fast tracking it. It's something that's going to be vetted out. I'd like to introduce Will Mason, if I could, he's the chairman of the Affordable Housing, and give us a little bit of background on why this came in front of us.
Thank you. The Board of Selectmen, to the audience here. Let me just introduce a little bit about our committee. Our committee is an all-volunteer committee, not elected. We have chosen to be a part of this committee because we believe in what we're doing. We have been tasked by the Board of Selectmen to come up with opportunities for affordable housing programs here in our town. And so we have been working long and hard to come up with what we believe is one of the best opportunities in this town right now. I know a lot of you are here to see the results of our PERT tests and our test holes. So we'll begin with those and get the first.
Well, can you try talking more into the mic? Online's having a hard time.
Can you hear me better now? Not really? This better? Yeah, that's better. All right. Can't really see it much better up there, but I would like to explain the process that we have gone through during the test holes and the perk testing. So it is two different processes. The first is to dig test holes around the property. Actually, that's not the first. The first was to send a soil engineer out to test for wetlands and to test for soils that may or may not be usable for a project of this kind. And so our engineer went out and he marked out wetlands that he found. If we can go to the next slide, and then we'll come back to this. Next one. Sorry, I'm all out of order now. So this is our GIS map showing the FEMA and the deep wetlands in green and in hashed lines. You notice that there are no wetlands marked by either DEEP or FEMA on this project. Okay, I'm done with that map. And so that's where we began when we started looking at this piece of property. We then went and our engineer marked out wetlands that he found. And if you look on the map, you see the dark blue lines in the center, over next to the pond, and in the corner to the left. Those were wetlands soils. And so we have made sure to exclude those from any impact from this project. So we dug 10 test holes. They're marked in red on the maps. Each one of those test holes was dug to 8 feet deep, where they found if they had water in the hole or not. They found where the high water mark was for the water table in those holes and what the soils were in those holes. 7 out of the 10 holes, we found acceptable soils and acceptable high water marks to continue doing testings and move on to perk test. The engineers then went out with ledge light to perform the perk tests, and I'd like to explain the process. The first is you dig test holes, generally 36 inches deep below topsoil. We then pre-soak the holes to make sure that we're not just dumping water into a dry hole. We pre-soak them. And then after they have been soaked, they refill the hole, generally with a pipe in it, to a depth of about 12 inches often. And they fill the hole with water and start measuring the rate in which the water drains. They measure in minutes per inch. A good range is between 5 and 6 minutes per inch. Anything less than 5 minutes per inch is too permeable and does not treat the water properly and could lead to groundwater contamination, which we obviously do not want. Anything over 60 minutes per inch is considered too impermeable and will not allow the moisture to be taken away quickly enough and would result in system failure. Now, that being said, we have the results. The result, we did 2 perk tests or 2 perk holes. And if you see there on the data sheet, there are the test holes, which tell you what the soil was found. And then there's the perk test itself. It tells you the time that they began the pre-soak and then the time where they began the fill to start measuring. And then they measured every 4 minutes. And it shows you the rate of drop. So test hole number or perk test number 1 came back at 8.8 minutes per inch, which puts us in a very favorable position for the systems that we're putting in. Perk test number 2, you can scroll up, came back, it began the pre-soak at 12:20. The fill was began at 1:43. And it came back at a rate of 14.5 minutes per inch, which also is very favorable for our project. So our recommendation, if you look on the other side of the sheet that you all have, it shows septic system designs and how many bedrooms they will handle. Basically, the designs are the same, but the leach fields are pared down for smaller buildings. They each call for a 1,000-gallon tank, and they call for different sizes of leach field. So with these results, our committee recommendation is to move forward to the next step. But that being said, our engineer, onto the map. Our engineer sent us a concept map of what we could see there. And this is not the original concept map that they gave me. The original one they gave me showed driveways bordering on property lines behind the buildings with parking bordering the neighbors. And I said, that is not acceptable. We do not want parking next to the neighbor's backyard. We want backyards next to the neighbor's backyard. Move it. And they said, yes, we will. They originally planned on 6 buildings. And I said, we don't want 6 buildings. We want 4 buildings. The buildings that we would like to see are 4 units wide, 2-story buildings, and that is all. Some of those units will be 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, or 3 bedroom, which then made it so that we now have only 4 septic systems instead of 6. And we still have the same number of bedrooms that we had wanted, and the same number of units without taking up as much of the property as it otherwise would have. If you look on the map, the double black line at the very top in the center is a retention pond to make sure that any runoff from the driveway or parking from cars is captured and treated before entering groundwater or the pond. I had a thought just a second ago. Oh, we intentionally made sure that the driveway took up as little of the green space as we could so that we can maintain the nature of our town. I grew up here. I was born and raised here on Pendleton Hill on a farm. I love our town. I went away, and when it was time for my kids to go to school, I brought them home. I got involved in this so that when we do something, it fits our town. I love our town. We have needs here. I was told just today of a woman, actually, you know what? I'm going to call Cheryl Haas to the stand, and I'm going to have her tell the story. It's her friend.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cheryl Haas. A gal reached out to me who had been a lifelong resident of North Stonington and very involved in the community. Her name is Helen Ahern. Some of you may know her, some of you may not know her. But she spent her whole life in North Stonington And her house just got to be too much for her financially, too big. And while she wanted to stay in this community, she couldn't. There wasn't anything that she could afford to stay here. And that's why I thought, like he said, if we had something like condos that were small enough for maybe people that are retired, don't want to leave the community, or maybe people who are handicapped and don't want to have a yard to do, where the fees will take care of that for you, or even the young kid just getting out of college of nursing. It's a starter place for them. This is what we're hoping will be in this community. Give everyone a chance to be able to start somewhere. There's no way that most people can even afford a house today. And that's why we went with the condos. I would have loved for Helen to have been able to stay in this town, and that would have been available for her to be able to do that. It's one of the reasons why I signed up for this committee, is to help each other. That's it.
Thank you. We know, having grown up here, having friends that live in Meadowood, I know and I understand that there are drainage issues on that end of Meadowood. This project, with the regrading that we are planning to do, and I want you to understand, when I say we are planning, I don't get a say other than a proposal. We are an advisory board only. You all get to say what goes, what doesn't. But in my 40 years of experience in construction, and some of that in heavy equipment operation and drainage and grading, the grading that I would like to see done would remove the standing water that ponds in backyards. I can't do a thing about the stuff that comes into your basements, and I'm sorry for that. I can't take the ground and push the water down, but I can make sure that the drainage from this does not affect the yards that border it in any adverse way. And so by grading, we can remove some of the standing water and the ponding that happens in your backyards already, and make sure that this project does not add more of an issue. You'll notice on the map, the one little dotted line going out to Route 2, that is an emergency exit and entrance for emergency vehicles in case they need to get in there and the other driveway is blocked, or you need to leave and that is blocked. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Will. So now we're going to open up the floor to, first I'll have the selectmen talk, see if they have any comment, and then we'll open up for the public comment. When we do that, could you just hold your comments maybe 2 to 4 minutes so everyone has a chance to speak? And then there's no voting that's going to take place tonight, but I do want to hear from everyone that wants to say something that has a chance to say it. But I'll start with Brett and Nicole and see if there's any comment you want to make.
I actually have some questions
Okay.
first, for Will. Will, just 2 things to start. Now I know with this proposal, you're looking at 3 bedrooms, up to 3 bedrooms. Why so much? I worry. So my concern is always the school impact study. So I know we'll have to do something like that down the road before we move things forward, and impact on how that'll affect our school system with the 3 bedrooms. So that's where I get a little nervous. So do you know
Okay.
why the 3 bedrooms?
So for me, with our current business climate, we have a lot of people working from home. If you have a husband and wife and they're both working at home, it would be nice if they each had an office instead of one in there sitting on the bed and one at the dining room table. And so we're trying to provide for multiple demographics.
All right.
With this project.
And then with the actual test holes, why was the decision made to not leave the pipes in the ground? So if we needed to do more testing down the line, we didn't have to redig.
I don't know. I did not make that decision.
Okay.
That would be between Ledge Light and our engineering firm.
All right.
That the town.
Because I know what I'm thinking, and I'm sure there's some other people thinking that when we did the holes, it was dry period. Obviously, we did them now, they might be a little different, but usually when there's the pipes left in the ground, we can retest, we can do things without having to go through the whole process again. And I don't know if that's something we'd have to do down the line, is test that again or not, or we just base it on what's here. But I didn't know if you had any background. So you
I do not.
basically do.
I do
Okay.
not.
So that would be a question for the engineers at some point. But that's all I have preliminary before hearing public comments.
So when I first heard of the proposal, some of my concern, and I live in Kingswood, I have many of my neighbors here. One of my concerns is the congestion traffic wise, right? So what I see is that the plan is proposing an entrance in and then an exit out, both of which sandwich Ron Lewis's big white farmhouse,
No.
correct?
No,
Is that not how I'm reading the map?
no. That is a piece of property that Ron Lewis owns,
Thank you.
but it is
Okay.
their property.
Okay, all right. So the exit, I'm assuming which one, the long straight one or the little curved one?
The
is
curved one would
entrance?
be the exit
Okay.
closest to Chucky's.
So one of my concerns is you're exiting the neighborhood there, and literally you could have a car coming out of Chucky's or whatever, or the mobile, turning left as that car's trying to turn right. I worry about that congestion at that light and the entrance and the exit, because then just a couple of feet down, we have the entrance and the exit coming out of the Kingswood neighborhood. So that's just been one of my concerns. What is preventing people from using the emergency dotted line exit? How will that be used? Because again, you have cars coming down at a pretty good clip right there on Route 2, and I just worry about them trying to get out onto Route 2 without a light.
Oh, I agree. That emergency exit is for emergency. So if there's a fire in here and somehow the main driveway gets blocked, fire trucks can get in, people can get out.
Yeah,
What's
well-
keeping people from doing it?
Yeah,
I believe we'll do it very similar to the back gate at the firehouse that has a Knox key that the fire department would hold, and they would be able to unlock the gate and go in.
okay, so there would be a gate
There
that
would be a
would
gate.
close it, okay.
Yes.
Okay. That's it for now.
Okay. Go ahead.
And just to reinforce this design, nothing is set in stone.
Right. This is
I
the
think the
con-
public needs to know that too. That there's things open for discussion as we go through the process. But as we look at this, I would also like to, since it is a town sponsored plan eventually,
Of course.
right? That we also gauge the public's, like we're doing tonight, all along the way before we go further steps and invest more resources into it. So that's where I love the showing tonight, and I'm glad you guys all attended, but I think we have to be mindful of how deep we go before we get public buy-in as well. So I think we all have to monitor that. But I really want to reinforce this to the public, like just because you see 4 units wide, 2 stories high as the preliminary, what makes sense,
Right.
based on what's come back so far and where the committee is, that doesn't mean it can't end up being single family or single floor little units or things like that. There is a process to this. So
This is
it's-
our committee's idea
right.
that we're proposing, but it is certainly, as I said, you have say. You guys get to decide. I don't get to decide. We just are an advisory board.
I honestly thought, because we have so much talent in this community, for people to put there what they would like to see. Or sketches, or, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And one thing as we start public comments that sometimes we see that people are passionate, pro and against things. So just be mindful they are all public servants. They volunteer their time and they're just trying to do the best they can for what they're tasked with and what they believe the community is. So just be mindful and respectful as we say our comments, please.
And Will, I have one more,
Yes.
one more question. Just orient me on here. Where is the M&J bus lot right now?
If you look next to that emergency road,
Yep, all the little white
you'll see the
lines.
little white lines. Those
Yep.
are the buses.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. And then there's nothing, because I today in thinking about this meeting, I was trying to think of other schools, right? Are there regulations regarding the closeness and the proximity to school property and housing developments? I'm thinking of West Vine in Pawcatuck, and literally there are houses sandwiched on either side. So there, to our knowledge, there's nothing.
To my knowledge, no. And I asked the engineers if to follow zoning setbacks as much as possible, and they said we could do that with all of them. So these all meet our town's zoning setbacks.
Okay, I'm all set for right now.
Anything more?
So, okay, we'll do that when we do public comment. All right, so quickly about the process. So what can you expect? So after tonight's meeting, the Board of Selectmen will take what we've heard from both Will and Cheryl and yourselves. And at a future meeting, I'm not saying the next meeting, but at a future meeting, we'll talk about should we vote to send this to what they call an A-24 review, which is done by the Planning and Zoning Commission. When it's town-owned property, Planning and Zoning has to look at the property and decide, is there something else the town could better use this property for? If the answer is no, and they feel comfortable with us moving to the process, it comes back to the Board of Selectmen. At that time, the Board of Selectmen could call a public hearing to get more feedback if we feel there hasn't been enough feedback or not enough publicity about this project. After that, we will then call for a town meeting. If we feel the town meeting is not sufficient to get because we vote at town meetings, but we don't vote at the budget at town meetings, obviously. But we could actually send this to a referendum if we had to. After all that, if the town votes yes, we want to continue with the project. That's only the first part. Now there's the developing of the project, the design work, everything that has to go in front of the building inspector and planning and zoning to make sure that rules are being followed. So again, it's a long process. I would say that I'd be surprised if there was ever a shovel in the ground within a year from now. It just doesn't happen overnight. So with that said, we're going to open up the public comment and just come up to this podium and you can form a line, how we're going to do it, come up, and there's not going to be any podium police over there, so however you want to do it. Just say who you are, where you live, and then if you can say 2 to 4 minutes, that'd be great. Thank you.
We have someone online also.
Yeah, we'll intertwine those.
Hi, I'm Jonathan McSwain, 21 Meadowwood. I'd like to first thank you guys for your presentation, whether I agree with it or not. I'll tell you that I am a product of low-income housing. I grew up in trailer parks off and on my whole life, so I do not have a prejudice against them. I understand all communities, to some degree, need them. Problem I have with this map has nothing to do with low-income housing, and I just want to address that right off the beginning. What I don't see is elevations when it comes to the planned roads or the environmental impact to where it comes to the sites for these projects. Essentially, what I see is, yes, there may be some grading to get rid of top water, groundwater. I do not see anything to prevent this dam for backing up the water into Mr. Armand, 9 Meadowwood Road, who already has a pyramid in his backyard, because that ground does not perk there. And that's about 30 feet adjacent from where that yellow that top yellow piece is. I can tell you that my sump pump goes off about every 35 seconds, even right now. These test holes were dug and what was 20% less than the average rainfall in April. So that is a big concern, I think, to a very large contingent of the people that are here. It's not so much the environmental impact that it's going to cause, that whether this project can support it or not, when it has a leach field that is a quarter of a mile away from the other properties that are being impacted by it, that's where you're going to see this concern. You know, if Meadowwood, which if I'm not, and I may be mistaken, and if I am, I would invite anyone to tell me now, has the town ever had to settle with the residents of Meadowwood because of drainage issues, but dating back into the early 80s or 90s?
I don't know the answer to that question, John. I wasn't here then. I know there's always been water issues, but I'm not sure what happened back in.
So we can all agree that there are significant water issues on Meadowwood.
Oh, I agree with you.
And there's also, I would say, the Bosma house floods pretty much yearly, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Now, our last flood was said to be caused by Beaver Dam, where my wife lost her car in the neighborhood. So when does the town, us that live on Meadowwood, stop subsidizing the town with our insurance for damages that are caused to our property? And then whenever we build this to become a retaining wall for further issues, yes, it may drain off the top, but water goes to its, I have managed over 1.5 million square feet of manufacturing space. I know a good bit about water, and I know that it's just like electricity. It goes to the path of least resistance. When you build resistance and that water cannot get to that wetland, the people on that street will be affected, even worse than they are now. And I would invite anyone else to come up and say what they like. But I do appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Claudia Hall. I live at 18 Meadowwood Drive. I too grew up in North Killington. I was not born here, but from second grade on, I've been here and I've lived in both wet neighborhoods. We have a house proposed right in my backyard right now. You had mentioned the picturesque wildlife. That's part of our enjoyment that we have. We have always had water, just like John and everybody else in the neighborhood. I have young neighbors that just what they no sooner got in that house and never flooded. This is going to impact everybody greatly. I guess some of my question too is no matter what happens here, the state can override everything and say, yes, you are going to do it. Is that true?
No, because it's town-owned property. If this was privately owned property, someone could come in under an 830G clause and pretty much do what they want. And that's happened. And I'm not going to pick on any particular builder, but you know, it's happened locally lately. I mean, it's happened up near the Katie's farm stand just recently on Route 2 over near White's, and now on the 9 properties over where Mystic Road hits Route 2.
Yeah.
Again, that's being done in the 830G, so you don't have to abide by local zoning laws as far as lot size. So, but the state is saying we don't have 10% of our houses are not recorded by them as affordable homes. And John, I hate to correct you, but these aren't low income. There's low income, Section 8, and affordable. If these were called workforce houses, I mean, there's not many low income homes that start at around $400,000. So, but with that said, if someone came in, a developer came in and they said, let's say that property, it's over near the police, it's sitting there near Holly Green, it's been sitting there empty for years. Someone to come and put a 4-story giant apartment complex and say, we're going to make 1/3 of this affordable. There's nothing the town can do to stop it. So what the state's doing is they're trying to say, wouldn't you rather build something that fits, something that you can live with versus someone coming and building something you don't want? Now, you said you've been here for a long time, so you must remember the 2006, 2007 proposal on Boombridge Road, which was, I think, was a 4-story or 5-story apartment complex. And what happened there was the town fought it for a short time, saying we didn't have a ladder truck. And we didn't have sewer and septic that could support it. Luckily for the town, a recession hit. And then the builder did not have the money to do the project, and it just died on the vine. But that was something that nobody in the town wanted. It's similar to the solar fields. When the siting council says you're going to get a solar field in North Stonington, we fought the one, this board had just been elected, we fought the one on 184, and we got them to move it to one side of 184 instead of both sides. So we lost the battle. We won the battle, lost the war. But there's not much say towns have. So when this 830G comes in, builders can come and do whatever they want. But the thing is, being on town property, you guys could decide that you don't want, the town to decide we don't want to do this there, or we do, but at least we have a decision where you wouldn't have one if it was another piece of property.
The property now too, I mean, it's also used.
Can we turn that mic, pull that mic down a little bit? There you go.
We brought it up at the last meeting. The school also uses quite a bit of that property. The cross-country guys run through there. Somebody actually, Boy Scouts or somebody went through and cleared a path last year for it.
So
in there.
I thought the track was on the other piece off Ravenwood.
No? Yeah.
Okay.
So that is there as well. You know, kids are out there, we're out there.
No,
It's enjoyable to look at, but like John said too, I mean, you're just really pushing that water level, especially with the septics, and I don't care how you perk test it. It's not going to be good. It's not going to be good for our neighborhood.
Okay.
And the safety concern on Mystic Road is huge. And I brought that up at the last meeting. And I said, I was actually going to go to town and ask for a speed hump because I have a granddaughter who lives in Lime White Lake and she catches a bus there. And it's phenomenal how they come over that hill on Mystic Road, how anybody survives there. So between that and the light at the corner and the gas station, people turning the canoe too, that's going to be a nightmare.
okay. Well, thank you so much for
Thank you.
coming in. Is there someone online that wanted to speak? I see a hand up. Gary Nino,
Can you hear me?
I can.
So I'm I'm fully supportive of this. I think it's great. I'm happy to see the town take a positive step towards some sort of defense of what I know is allowed by the state under 830G, but I think it's flouting the zoning rules and destroying the town with the way it's being implemented. I've seen good examples of it elsewhere. I've seen bad examples of it right here. So thank you for this feasibility study. I've seen a lot of feasibility studies in my career, and this is exactly that. It's, as you said, Bob, we're on hole 3 of an 18-hole golf match. I completely agree with that. I'm hoping that the town at some point would think about putting a bow around this and hiring a developer to develop it in a fashion that the town dictates rather than the town try to take this on ourselves. Any thoughts to that?
No, about me at the 19th hole. So yeah, I think obviously this is too, I didn't mean to joke there. This is too big a project for the town to take on, and we're not engineers. We're not home builders. So I think that, yeah, this would, if it came to approvals, that'd be another whole phase, Gary, would be to decide how we were going to move to the next phase. Would it be a developer? Would it be someone that we could, it had to go through a bid process and so on. So yeah, I don't think that this is something we would want to do on our own by any means.
Perfect. I was getting a little twitchy. I thought I was going to hear the word self-perform, and then you would have lost me, Bob. So thank you.
All right, Gary, thanks. Next, just naming. Yep.
My name's Bonnie. I am 10 Meadowwood. I'm fairly new to town. I came in 2021. I have some concerns, obviously, hence why we're all here. Just a couple things. I was one of the first houses, actually, before I was able to move into my home. The septic tank was replaced and all of the tests were done, and it had to be an above ground septic system because of the water table. Armand at 6 and Emily, you guys are 14, all have above ground septic tanks. We have, mine looks probably halfway decent, is, I call it the dead elephant. Okay, Armand's is gigantic, and Emily's, theirs is literally a speed bump. Okay, so there's obviously been other testing in the area that the water table is too high. So I'm wondering, you guys did your perk test at the driest time.
Sorry, we did them in
Normally
April.
April is totally cool, but this year it wasn't.
No.
I was out of town recovering from neck surgery, and I came home and there was water in my basement. And that was in the middle of May. Water in my garage, I should say. I had to put a sump pump in because my basement floods at least 4 inches every time it rains. Every single time. I'm not sure if everybody in town is aware. I know the people that live on Meadowwood. Ray, you informed me that before I moved in, there was a flood that happened, that there's literally a car from down the street was floating down the road. Not this past year, but the year, but that was yours? Yeah, okay, cool. But the last winter, the fire department had to come down and was waist deep to clear out drainage systems and everything because they were so flooded and backed up. So I'm just wanting to make sure that there's really the right testing being done for what's going to actually impact. And I genuinely understand you guys are doing your best. I'm not trying to come out here and be like, you know, I hate you guys, but I hate you a little bit.
You're not the only one.
I know, and I it's not you personally, it's the concept. So taking care of the groundwater and everything is going to be fine, but if you're going to put a retaining wall in, and exactly what happened in my house is it's going to start to damage that retaining wall. It's just going to all find somewhere else to go. It's going to push out, it's going to push through, it's going to push under. It's going to become problematic for those of us right on that strip right there at this time. I mean, I know Ray has water in his basement, Claudia, you have water in your basement, Christy, you have water in your basement. We all, I understand you can't get the water out of my basement, but the water's coming into my basement because what's happening in that backfield. It's not my house, it's not my foundation, it's the water table is too high, and just digging in general to put foundations in for these buildings is going to negatively impact that.
So when you say what's happening in the backfield, you mean nature, or are you saying there's something we've done to change things in the backfields?
So the septic systems having to go in is changing that whole
No,
field.
but there's nothing we've done now that's
No,
making it
nothing
okay,
you
okay.
guys have done. No, it's just its natural state of being out
Okay.
there is simply like, I walk out there, I meet up with many of the neighbors in the backfield and we hang out and have a cup of coffee or a beverage or something sometimes, and we have to wear galoshes to go out there after it's rained because otherwise we'll sink 3 inches deep. So I just think that the testing was done. Yes, it was done in the spring. You totally did it right. This year just happened to not be a normal year for that area. Anyways, that's my comment on the water. The only other couple things that I want to make sure that are discussed if this does choose to go forward, pet policies. Many of us in the area have pets. I know mine sometimes is a problem. However, is there a noise ordinance in town? I apologize.
There
I
is
don't
not.
know
There's not a
that.
noise ordinance.
So like, I'm concerned about additional animals being in such a confined space and additional barking, because if they start barking, my dog's going to start barking, Chance is going to start barking, Marlon's going to start barking, everybody's going to start barking. And then it's going to just be problematic for the town, especially those that have littles and are trying to sleep. The other thing is, nope, that's what I had. So it was the noise issues and the pets and, you know, three-family home or not three-family home. That's not what I want to say. A three-bedroom home. That is going to speak to kids, and I have absolutely no problems with kids. Love them all. But again, the noise is going to change in the neighborhood. And the very last thing I want to say is it's not about whether you were born here, lived here your whole life, or just moved here. I think the idea of your friend needing somewhere to stay is absolutely necessary, and having condos, I just don't think this location is the location for that.
Thank you.
So it's fine.
So no on the noise ordinance. We don't have one. And the pets is like the 14th hole. We're not talking about that
I just want
yet.
to make sure that if it goes through, it's
All right, thank you. Laura?
Okay, hi, I'm Laura. I live on Pinecrest. So all my neighbors are here. I have a question about, and maybe this has been answered, but I don't know the answer. Why was this area selected? I understand about it being town land versus not town land, but why do we want to put this so close to houses and a school and a busy intersection and like squeeze it behind someone's, that White House that's there, the farm or whatever it's called? Why is this the spot that we're looking at
So
is my
let
question.
Will answer that because he's the one that brought it to us, so.
So this is obviously the last one we decided to look at. But I went in and I talked to the assessor and I asked him for a list of all town-owned properties. And one by one, our committee looked at them and ticked them off as potential or not. And we found more cons in every other town-owned lot than we found in this one. And that's why we decided to move forward with this and see what is available and what the feasibility would be for this particular lot.
Okay, I would also say some of the pushback we had on the plan that was proposed for the Winterchalk Hill project was not close enough to main roads, not close enough to the schools, too rural. And this answered some of those questions. So that's why this particular property made more sense. But again, it's just a proposal. As they said, they looked at town-owned, and I explained why town-owned properties versus a private-owned property. So thank you. Next, Zardes.
Hi, I'm Maisie Zardes. I live at 12 Meadowood Drive. I am not as impacted as my neighbors. I'm fortunate in that respect. I do get flooding in my backyard. I do get water in my basement, but not to the degree. I'm literally smack dab in between two backyards that have the giant mounds. I'm concerned that when you all start building back there, that water is inevitable. We can't control it. Doesn't matter what retaining wall you put up, what drench you built, whatever. We can't predict what water is going to do. So we've lived in that house for 22 years. And when we had that flood not that long ago with your wife's car, the water came all the way up my front yard. And, we had to get the fire department to pump out the street. But you start building back there, water's going to go, it has to go somewhere. And I don't want to end up, unfortunately, like every other house in my neighborhood with a huge mound in their backyard. I value my property. I love my property. The whole reason we moved here is because of the school system, the neighborhood, in that was town-owned property. Wetlands can't be built on. That was the reason why we moved here. And, I would hate to see our nice flat backyard turn into a mound like every other neighbor on my street. And no, I am not like some of my neighbors that have mold and inches of water in their basement or having to use sub pumps that run 2 and 3 at a time for 24 hours a day. I don't want that. And I'm not opposed to helping people. My husband is from the worst parts of New Orleans, considered low income. I'm all for helping other people. I just don't think that it's too congested. It's too much of a small space to have all this happening. It's just a concern. And I would hate to see, some of us that are not directly impacted, like most, impacted in a negative way.
Okay, thank you. Anybody online, Suzanne? Nope. Okay, next.
Hi, my name is Leah Majorano. I live at 16 Meadowood Drive. Terrified of public speaking, but this matters. So I wanted to be here. I absolutely understand the need for affordable housing. I appreciate and respect the work that goes into it. We bought our home, the ink isn't even dry on our contract, and we had a flooded basement. We had absolutely no idea. Shame on me for not knowing that it was an issue. I grew up in Cedar Ridge. We bought in Meadowwood, and we actually called and said, oh my goodness, if this is a problem, can we rescind? Nope, you can't. So we've had multiple inches in our basement to the point where we've had to have a fire department, not ours, because I'm connected, and they brought a machine out, helped us pump it out. Thank goodness we had the help. We've had flooding in our backyard and our basement. We've spent thousands on updating and maintaining our sump pump and putting proper drainage away from our home to protect our home. Our sump pump is constantly running. Our dehumidifier is constantly running. We are living on a prayer with our septic tank because we were quoted $40,000 to $50,000 to replace it. Cannot imagine that. For it to be properly engineered because of our high water table. So when I think about just 4 septic tanks being put in, but we have 1,000-foot septic tank and we're 3 people in our home, soon to be 4. It seems like it's just inundating that area of land with sewage and more water use. And inevitably, it is going to impact everyone who's there, including the people who move in. I am going to say, we have a child starting in elementary school in the fall, another on the way. I grew up here. I loved playing at recess where it was private. Not one neighbor can see it on the recess grounds right now. And it's so nice. And it's such a gift to live here and give our kids that. And we have the cross country team. We watch the races in our backyard. We watch the meets. And kids go, my nephew included, recreational play all the time. There's beautiful wildlife that's there. And I'm thinking, are there environmental protection laws for wetlands? I know that there is space, was space on Route 2, I believe, by the senior center near the Holly Green. And there were plans that was voted down by the town. But I think if that's a location that is available, again, I support the need for affordable housing. I don't support this location for a plethora of reasons. And you're hearing current residents explaining our significant concerns, and please do hear us in that, because it's only going to become a problem for the people that do move there. And so I would really like to maintain what we currently have, which is land use for the children. We all just deal with our water problems, and I cannot imagine them becoming exacerbated because it's going to really impact. So thank you. I feel like I kind of hit some points, and I just also feel like we're packed in like sardines. If it goes there, it's like school, neighborhood, housing, condominiums, gas station. It's like everything all in one spot. And we have a huge, beautiful town. So thank you.
Thank you, Leah.
Amy French, Babcock Road. First, I'd like to say volunteering sucks.
Amy, you pull the mic down a little bit.
Sorry. Volunteering sucks. Thank you for doing it. It's not pointing fingers at you. Please know that. However, born and raised North Stonington, like some people, I do feel bad for these people who live in Kingswood and Meadowwood. I don't live there, but I've seen it. It floods. I don't even have to care. I don't even have to talk about the water. My concern is if it is town-owned property, who takes care of that property? Who is maintaining that land? Who's mowing it? Who is there an HOA? Is there an association? What happens if Jane and John Doe move in there and they're like, oh, this sucks? What happens then? Like, who's maintaining that land? Our highway department? You guys? The selectmen? Like, who's maintaining that land? When those houses, like.
One after now.
Sure.
So the idea, and again, it's an idea, is to build condos. So there would be a condo association that would have to deal with the maintenance of the buildings and grounds. There are a couple reasons we decided we wanted to do condos rather than apartments. First, in apartments, income is evaluated annually. And if someone then outgrows the income that to qualify for an affordable home, they have to move. If they purchase a condo and they qualify for it on the day that they get their mortgage, they could then turn around and next year earn $1 million and they can still stay where they live. And that's one of the big reasons why we wanted to do condos. The second is because the town is planning on maintaining ownership of the property and not deeding it away or selling it, that the people that own the condos will pay property tax on the unit itself, but not on the land beneath it. The property tax that they save on the property, the land under it, would then be available to pay maintenance fees to the condo association, which will be much less than what the property tax would be. And so that's, hope that answers your question.
Bill, before you leave, and I'm sorry, Amy, just want to tag on, what is the committee's vision for the amount of units that would be affordable, or would
All
it
of
be
them.
100% affordable?
All of
Thank
them.
you.
One more question before you leave. Sorry, Amy. So you brought up the condos, and they'd be for sale. So I know one of the issues we had, I think on one of the Anthony Road property is that we don't have, and maybe I'm hoping that you looked into this. We don't have a way to enforce that affordable housing. So somebody buys it, they qualify, they move out, they can rent it to whoever they want at that point. I'm under the impression that we'd have to have a housing authority to enforce those things. Did you guys look into that aspect of how that transfer?
We have not yet.
happen?
They would be deed restricted. We know that.
Right.
That is something that we would look into and try and figure out.
Okay. Because I think that's a big component, especially if it's on town property.
Certainly.
How do we enforce it to make sure the reason we're building these go into long-term use?
Well, they certainly wouldn't be able to rent them unless the renters go through the evaluation process.
I don't think that's true, because once they own it, there's no restriction on that for a rental. So I mean, that happened on the Anthony Road
we will look
property.
into it.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I also want to know, like, I'd like to know who is deeming these affordable? Like who's setting the price? If you're saying affordable and then now you're adding in condo fees, adding in land fees, and like Brett says, they get qualified, then they can't afford it. Something happens. Who's reliable for that? Who's responsible for that? I guess my question. Does that fall back on to us, the town? Who's going to, with the associate, like, are you as a committee, who chooses that amount? I guess. And I'm all for affordable housing. I'm all for it. There, not so much, not at all. There's so much other land in town that I hope you take every person who lives in that backyard. I really hope that you take their livelihood, their families, their considerations. I live on a back road. I love my privacy. I'm thankful for my grandparents every day to be able to grow up where I have. I want them to enjoy where they are too. And I hope you really take that into consideration with all of this. I know your job stinks. There's so many other pieces of land. I really hope that you go back to the drawing board at some point and nitpick those other things, whether it's too far out. Get a bus, get an Uber. There's Ubers. That's just my concern. The congestion, it's crazy. Summer's coming, the casino, it's just a huge impact on not just them, but now all of us with that traffic. But there's so many other pieces of land. I really, really hope that you come back to the drawing board and look at those pros and cons for the other pieces of land, just for their sake.
Thank you. Gary, before we go to you, we're just going to everybody else have their first shot first, so you can speak. It's up to you.
Let him go, please.
Gary,
Just be real quick. Nothing to get wound around the axle as far as controlling how the property is utilized. All that can be handled in simple deed restrictions, which are captured in the purchase and sale agreement. As long as we take the time to figure out how to restrict it, it could be maintained as affordable in perpetuity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. Can you guys hear me? I thought I would go last. My name's Adam. We live next door at 125 Main Street. We're not from here. We're from New Jersey. That's why I figured let all of you speak before me. We've been here for almost 2.5 years. And just in those 2.5 years, the amount of water that has risen in our backyard, we had Christie Landscaping supposed to come over today to evaluate how to deal with this problem. Our basements are constantly flooded. I understand affordable housing. We're from New Jersey. We get it more than anybody. We know congestion, we know traffic. To the people in Kingswood and Meadowwood, I understand everything you're dealing with. We're on the other side of that triangle. That's our property. So adding more water to it, to the already flooding yard and basement we have, and the flooding Main Street, which the town had asked to drill more drainage through our front yard to divert the water from the field. We're kind of sitting in this little pocket of just additional water. And now we want to talk about septics and then another water basin. I'm not for this spot. I don't envy your job. We want affordable housing. I would rent the white building and part of my home out because we have the space. It's me and my fiance, and we do work from home. But the amount of change and impact in just the 2.5 years we've been here, I think we made the wrong decision. This is what we left New Jersey. Like, we left from this. This is not what, this is our backyard. Like, I know you guys are there. I see the ospreys, I see the hawks that are in our yard and in that wetlands that's supposedly not wetlands. This is a huge impact. And we haven't been here 3 years, and I've made that home a project to restore for Frank and Monica. We care about the land. We're preserving the land. I'm planting native plants to try to deal with the water problems. And I'm just seeing a huge amount of impact that I don't know how we're going to plan for this. I understand the problem that we have, but you said it, water flows the path of least resistance. My house is right there. So I know you guys are dealing with it. I don't see how this congestion is how this is gonna work out. Like, those 2 lines of road going out to Mystic, that this is a shock because we just learned about this yesterday. I thought all of that land behind me and next to the cemetery was all wetland and protected. That's why we bought the home, so that we have that privacy and that we don't have to worry about developments. Just don't New Jersey nor Stonington. Don't do it. We left for that. And this is what's happening. And I would rent my own property out to a family before this. 32 units, 2 people a unit, that's 64 at a minimum. That's just going to be exponential. The lack of restrictions is very concerning. So, yeah, that's all I have to say. I figure I'll let you guys talk before I do. The Jersey guy. So.
Thank you.
Armand Viel. I'm at 6 Meadowwood Drive, the guy with the pyramid in the backyard. Most of this is just going to reiterate what you've heard here today. And you've heard similar concerns. We see there's some studies, there's some tests done for this immediate area here, but is there not any testing done on the outside area? The impacts it's going to have on that neighborhood. I remember back in high school, driving down Old Colony, driving my dad's car through a lake in the middle of the road. It's always been a problem. We start diverting that water. John made very good valid points. We start diverting that water. Where's it going to go? Have we done studies to that? You had mentioned this is your last stop, the last property that was approved. What happens? if it doesn't go through? Where do you guys stand? What are your options as far as the state's requirements? Have we thought about that yet? Or are we just hoping on the dream and a prayer that this happens? Trust me when I tell you, I have nothing against neighbors. My neighbors are all here. I would drop anything at any time of day to help any one of these guys. It's not about having neighbors moving in. It's about the impact of the environment that we've become adapted to, that we've made adjustments to go on with day-to-day living. We talk about affordable housing and something you had mentioned, affordable housing. Well, you chose the condos because of the fact that you could buy at a certain price initially. And if you made $1 million the year after, you wouldn't be forced out of there. If you made $1 million the year after, why would you need affordable housing? So again, to reiterate what every one of my neighbors has come to the table with here today, we have concerns. Most of us have grown up in this town. We have concerns. We love this town just as much as anybody else claims to. But to see it go down in a river of debris, how many of you guys remember right in our village having to rebuild that whole bridge that flooded out? It's a concern, and I can only hope and pray that you hear these concerns because they're valid, not because we're against anything or anybody. We just want to live. We want to be able to live confidently and knowing that our future isn't going to be jeopardized by having to pick up a second, third, fourth job to come up with a new septic system that's going to be inevitable. Today alone, I saw Richard White's truck come through the neighborhood twice. He's more popular than the ice cream man back in the day. I mean, again, for what it's worth, take it with everything it's been said.
Thank you. Thank you.
Going up last is going to be kind of tough because Amy, Armand nailed it. Oh, good. So my name is Josh Hayes. I live at 19 Meadowwood Drive, and I'm just going to be up here beating a dead horse essentially. Sump pumps, headaches, sleepless nights, been through it all. Sucks. The one thing that I kind of just respectfully disagree with is that, I know you had mentioned the story of your friend who needs somewhere to live because they've grown up here their whole life and they want to stay here. And I can appreciate that, but you made a comment about young homeowners. And I mean, I'm young, but I feel like I'm 50 after all these water problems. I think if we try to implement affordable housing, and just to clarify, I lived in East Providence, Rhode Island. I lived in affordable housing. The reason why I came here was because I saw a future with my wife, to get away from that life. And I don't want to have it come back. I work 7 days a week. It sucks to know that it could potentially seem like a nightmare where I'm just kind of like back in that cycle of being near all the ruckus and chaos. I like the balance that I have right now. But you had mentioned young homeowners being able to afford a place. My wife and I worked our butts off to get that house, and no one really had a violin for us saying, there needs to be a place for them to go. We wanted a house, we saw it, and we worked extremely hard to get it. And I just think that, affordable housing, the idea is great, but the execution just needs to be thought with this and not this, I think. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, I'm Emily DePalma. I'm at 14 Meadowwood. We moved in about 2.5 years ago. The week we moved in, our basement flooded. And we have since put thousands and thousands of dollars into our house. But aside that point, so one thing that this is missing is the elevation, which you were pointed out previously. What you would see if the elevations were on there is that the septic is being put at the highest elevation of the property right now. The rest of the elevation goes sloped towards all the houses. That's why all the water runs off currently. you can't regrade unless you go below grade away from us. There's no, you can't build up a grade. Our houses are already existing. So you can't go down a grade because then you will hit the water table. And that's why the other tests failed. So you can't, the regrading theory is good, but it's not practical. It's not going to be able to work. The other thing is the wetland that's in the corner of the left, which is actually right behind my property. Also, you can't touch that. So the regrading of the wetland that's right there, that's protected, can't be changed. Thus, all the water will be going that direction because that will still be the low point, and that will pool up all the water and continue to go into our backyards. The other question that I had, which I didn't see on the proposal up there, is what is the septic going to look like? Is it a leach field that's flat in the ground, or is it a hill septic like the rest of us have? And unfortunately, to all of our neighbors will be having if your septic goes out. So those are just some of the questions that I had. Then on top of that, I guess, so the where there was flooding last year, that they say the dam was the reason for the flooding, is because there's a stormwater pipe that runs through basically that triangle point all the way to that wetland area. Probably part of the reason that it has not been studied by the DEEP or FEMA, because it maybe was man-made at some point. Unfortunately, we all have houses and you can't unman-made a man-made wetland. Part of that though is when doing the digging, was that discovered or looked at? The storm drain pipe. So that would be one of my other concerns is that going to be hit? Is that going to be disrupted? Thus making all of our water problems significantly worse. That's kind of like everyone's mentioned, water travels the path of least resistance. If you have the septic at the high point, also it's confusing to me how you're going to get a leach field that's going to just dissipate it from a low point of the buildings. The buildings will have to be higher. Thus, right at the property lines, there will be a large impact of the water runoff. Something that I would like to see done after whatever the next step is on the process would be a stormwater runoff analysis by a civil engineer to see what the impact would be of the neighborhood on the stormwater runoff, and will those water leach field and the water basins actually be able to hold the impact of additional water. So thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
Mark Perkins, new to town. I just had a couple quick points. I'm the proud builder of Mount VL. I think first off, people aren't realizing the difference between a sieve and a test hole. The sieve test is going to sieve no matter what. That's the entire point of the pre-soak. So the ground sieve testing is going to sieve test whether it's a rainy May or whether it's a dry April. The issue being is the water table. And that was where we had issues with Armand's, where we did have a dry April. So when the test holes were dug, the water table was lower. I'm a little bit confused, concerned why they didn't leave pipe in the test holes. It is what it is. I mean, I'm not, I think it's too, as you know, Bob said, it's the third hole, which is just time to get going on the golf course. I'm not for or against the project, but you know, in response to the septic, the leaching field, you can have leaching fields above septic tanks. There's pump chambers. There's things to make that work. You know, I don't think CLA even got to that point of even designing it. It was a quick 1,000-gallon tank with the GST system in there. One of the questions I would hope would be addressed, because there is obviously major runoff issues in that corner area being the low point. The town still hasn't really addressed the whole drainage issue in Meadowwood, right? That's the beginning of the problem. So when that water pools down there by John and Jans and everybody, that's the low point. And the issue you guys are having is that any water source that it goes through from there is basically uphill. So without pump systems, you can't pump up. So if this project happens, if it doesn't happen, there's got to be a way at that low point to try to put a new drainage system in, whether unfortunately it has to be through somebody's yard or not, to that has to be addressed at the same time, because if you don't, you are correct. You're adding a lot of more impervious, ground, you're adding a lot more issues, and you're adding a lot more just traffic and whatnot. So the point I want to make is, Amy's point of, find another piece of land, find another piece of land. Well, unfortunately, this town has spent a long time kicking the can down the road on a lot of projects, whether it be the firehouse, the school, or whatnot. And affordable housing has been something we've been kicking down the road for a long time, until 7-8 years ago when the state said, well, you know what, you can't kick it anymore. We're going to start introducing programs like 830G. Whether or not this project goes forward, I think it's important to realize that this would be a project that the town could control because it's a town-owned property. If it's not a town-owned property, we can continue to have 2-acre lots by, name the developer, but there's been a lot put in lately where you can dump 6, 7, 8 houses on it. At some point, we're all going to sit here, whether it's in my backyard, your backyard, somebody's backyard, and somebody's going to come in here and buy a 50-acre piece of land, and they're going to stick 400 units on it, and it's going to be privately owned, and everybody in this town can be as pissed off as they want. There's going to be absolutely nothing we can do. 830G is very locked tight in that. So I know Amy had mentioned, find another piece of property. Well, we did find another piece of property, and that was up on Winnechaug Hill. And there was a different circumstance, and there's a different set of neighbors up there saying, not my property. So whether or not this project works, I think drainage is a crazy issue there. I've been here my whole life. I always thought it was wetlands and you couldn't build on it as well. And times are changing. But I think as a whole, the town needs to realize that at some point, this is coming, right? This is coming, whether we like it or not. 830G, affordable housing, whatever you want to call it, it's going to happen. So we have anywhere we can find a town parcel, whether it's here or somewhere else, that this could happen. The more control we can have on the amount of affordable housing that comes into this town by it being town property and town owned, we have to take advantage of that. I think there are major water issues, drainage issues, groundwater issues that need to be addressed. But if we don't start trying to find places to put some of this affordable housing, whether it's here or not, it's going to come eventually. And a project like Boom Bridge or wherever else is eventually going to come back down our throat, and we're going to have absolutely no say on what goes on there. So that's all I got.
Thank you.
Can I ask Mark a question on that?
Yeah.
Just a little bit about with your drainage knowledge there. And thank you for those comments. If these were laid out in a different aspect or a different amounts, right? So if we went down to 2 units or 1 unit properties and spread out differently, do you think that would have a different effect on how that water would move?
Well,
Obviously,
it may, but the problem is when you have Meadowwood Road, the way it comes down and it pools right there, sort of in front of John and the halls and all that, right? That's the lowest area. And then when you go between the halls property and Armand's and all that to where this property is, the homes have created a barrier to stop that natural water that flows down. At some point before Meadowwood, that water flowed, it would flow down to that low point, and then it would work its way into that pond by the mobile. So when we put Meadowwood in prior to zoning in this town, right, we created that water issue there. And we've been battling that ever since. And then we put drainage in along Meadowwood, but we don't have the proper pitch to be able to get it to go where it's supposed to go anyway. And I told John and I, had a adult beverage on his back deck today. And I don't think I've ever stood on his back deck in my life and not heard the sump pump go off every 2 minutes. And that's just what it is. Chrissy and Josh, same thing. They have these issues because that part right there in Meadowwood, that's the low area. That's for everything above Kingswood that comes down from Dave Sellens. It's probably, it pools there. And then what happens is it's got nowhere else to go because the houses right there on the corner are blocking. So now that water seeps into the ground and it brings the water table up, and then it just brings everybody's basements there. It's got nowhere to go because it's trying to get through to the other side. It's trying to get through to the pond and all the wetlands behind it, but it can't. So if this project does, and I'm sure of it, CLA or whoever very capable, I think that the issues of drainage in Meadowwood have to be addressed at the same time as the project. You can't just drop this project in and then put even more houses and buildings and parking lots between that natural pooling area and where that pond is. You've got to find a way to get that water to finish going to where it's supposed to go. You know, everybody said 1,000 times, water is the laziest, most powerful thing. It's going to find its low spot. It's finding its low spot in front of these people's houses, but then it can't go any further. It's just sitting there. So there's got to be a way to get that across. And just by sticking more property and more buildings and more parking lot in between, you're just creating more runoff and more, it's got nowhere to go. All that parking lot's less pervious area for it to drain, and it's just going to pool up. So just my opinion.
Thank you.
Mrs. O'Gara?
I am Teresa O'Gara. I live on 14 Old Colony Road. Our basement flooded 6 weeks after we moved in 1996. So we had to go through the whole septic thing. But what I wanted to address was something that keeps coming up, but I don't think people really understand it. And that's about your friend that wanted the more affordable place. She probably wanted a smaller place that she could take care of because she's getting older and she's having difficulties, right? Well, we just went through this with my aunt this last year. She wanted to move from her home. She ended up moving to HUD housing. And then she had her own small little apartment and she was helping her friend. And then last year in 24, she was there 1 year and then she had a stroke. And she ended up in the hospital and then in rehab. And in going through and trying to take care of her, what my sister and I discovered was that you can only be in HUD housing if you are totally independent. They don't allow, it's a federal rule, you're not allowed to have like assisted. She needed assistance, so she went to assisted living. Her friend that she was taking care of, they realized that he was not independent, so they had to call family to come and get him. And he was having Alzheimer's, so it was a nightmare trying to find his wallet that he lost, but they were able to find it. And then she ended up going to a nursing home, and then she died just this last year. And I guess the reason I'm bringing this up is because when people are elderly and they think that they can just go to a smaller place and they'll still be okay, what happens is very quickly they start to have health problems. And that can't be solved just by being in a smaller space. They actually need it. And she might be, but I'm just saying at some point, what happens is things go downhill very quickly. And before you know it, they need assisted living or they need, skilled nursing. And we don't have that here. I mean, it would be nice. I know it won't fix affordable housing, but it'd be nice if we had something out here, like a small little nursing home that people could still be involved in the community. I know that's not affordable housing, but that's just what I'm saying is that people, when they're elderly, things change so quickly and you don't think it's going to happen, but it does.
Right. Thank you, Mrs. O'Gara.
Hello, Glenn Mayorano, 16 Meadowwood Drive. Obviously, a lot of the same story as everyone else who lives on Meadowwood Drive. But I have some questions in general about affordable housing. So as far as I understand it, we need to get 10% affordable housing in the town of North Stonington. What are we at right now? Do we know?
Less than 1%.
We're at 1.3.
We are now? Okay.
Okay, so, and then what do we base that on? Like, how do we get that number?
The state has to recognize it as affordable housing, which means it has to be deed restricted. It can't and we have homes in town that we probably consider to be affordable, but if they're built before a certain date and they're not deed restricted, then the state does not count them in when they're tallying up the number of affordable homes that we have.
Right, so my point, how do we, we're trying to get that number up. So what are the things that we can do that aren't building condos? Like, can we count other things to count it towards affordable housing? Things like in-law suites.
Yes, you can have auxiliary apartments, which is no bigger than 30% of the original home that the property it's on.
Are those currently being counted in our number right now?
They are. Yep. We just don't have a lot of them that are deed restricted.
And then the question about like restrictions and where you can build, like, it seems like this 830G, you can just kind of disregard all zoning and things like that. So it doesn't make sense to me that we can take an area that normally we wouldn't want to build on. And then I like this site, town land, all that. It doesn't make sense to me that we would put, like, the whole point of the town land is that we can't build on it. Like, that's why everyone likes it. So we all built that, chose our houses to live there, because behind it was this beautiful land that people couldn't just buy and build on it. It seems like we're now doing it to ourselves, that we're gonna just build on the land that normally wouldn't be built on. It just seems like a moot point for that. To choose town land to
So
build
it
on.
depends on how the town acquired the land. So some of the land we've acquired is buildable. It hasn't been built on. The land on Winter Jog Hill was given to the town in lieu of back taxes. It's 108 acres, I believe, off Wrights Road. But it is rocky terrain and there's a lot going on Winter Jog Hill Road. So that was the last project that came to us. And some of the things that were said about being too rural and tough to get to and all those excuses, it wasn't near a main road, have been solved by this particular project. But just because it's town land doesn't mean it's not buildable. It just means it hasn't been built on. You gonna answer that question? Go ahead.
So when we first started looking at this project, Brian did some research and he said that he thought that this was part of our conservation. What do you call it? It was restricted.
Conservation easement?
Conservation restriction.
Okay.
And so I did a deed search. I went into town hall and had our town zoning officer help me go through the records. And we found the original deed to the property that said that this was reserved for future development for the town. So that was the original deed and the original thought behind it when they deeded it to the town.
Thank you. Continue.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the same story at this point. If you're gonna listen to the people in the town, this is not what the people want. And it seems like there's 4 people in the town that are saying, well, we want it there. It's our last spot, so we're gonna put it there. Feels like there's a small minority that's making a big decision for the rest of the town. That's how I feel at this point.
So I think that's why we have hearings like this, so we can listen to the feedback. Again, this is the first time it was presented to us by the Affordable Housing Commission, and we wouldn't be doing our jobs unless we were listening to the public, correct? So don't say that we're either pushing it through, we're not pushing it through. We're so early on in the process. We're just listening now.
Yeah, but the process is going to continue. Like, you will do this if you can.
So remember, and this is something that I love to remind everybody when people are passionate about coming to our meetings, we have a form of government which is town meetings. So all of this is going to lead up to a town meeting. Everybody, this is why it's so important. And I monitor the Facebook page for our town, and there are times that you can get a lot of really good information. And we've felt all of your passion in those posts. And it's great. When I drive up, when Bob and Brett and I drive up to a meeting for a regular selectman meeting, and our cars are the only ones in the parking lot, those are boring meetings. This is good for you all to be here so we can hear. But remember, in the end, we will all be in this room. And when I say all, I mean every person in the town can come to the town meeting, and you all and us, because we're residents, will vote on this. We are not moving this forward. It's one of the best parts of our job, is that we don't have to necessarily have that burden on our shoulders. We are going to decide this. So I want everybody to understand that. Hole 3, not a golfer. Hole 3 is where we're at. Hole 19 is where we need to get to, right? Because that's
where we drink.
The drinks in the restaurant, because we'll need one by then. But we all are going to sit in this room at some point in the future if it gets to that point, it's got to go to planning and zoning, it's got to go to, and then we will decide whether this is what's best for the town. So I just want everybody to make sure you're leaving tonight with that knowledge. And Bob brought up a really good point. We have sat in a town meeting, because that's our form of government. And it's really sometimes scary for residents to know that only the residents that show up for a town meeting vote. So that's why it's important to get the word out there. But if that night we feel we don't have a good representation, anyone in that room can suggest that we bring it to a referendum, which is we bring pollers in and every member of town from 8A to 8P gets to come and vote on that. And that's an option. So I'm remaining relatively quiet. You all heard a little tiny bit of some of my reservations, but I am your neighbor in Meadowwood, Kingswood. I live on Pinecrest in the back, but we are all going to get a say on this. It's not going to be for people. I didn't want to, I want everybody in the room to understand that that's our town government, and that's what makes it great. So it's going to be important, if this is really passionate for you guys, to get other people out to these meetings.
I don't want to just pile on them because they're the ones who actually volunteered to do it. I understand that. But I also understand, as what they mentioned in the last meeting, we have about 4 to 5 years to do something that we want to do. Otherwise, the state's going to do it for us. So is there anything other than just saying, hey, get 4 people from your town, figure out what to do? Does the state provide any kind of funding or help that they're going to give us, that, or are we just on our own to say, hey, I don't want it in my backyard, put it in yours? Are we going to be doing that for the next 4 years?
So I spend a lot of my day arguing with Hartford. Hartford, I can't tell, I think there's 1,400 unfunded mandates that have come our way in the last 10 years. Unfunded mandates it's a great idea by Hartford, and the town pays for it. Small rural towns like North Stonington, which are very fiscally responsible. Obviously, we haven't raised taxes in 4 years. Not many towns can say that. Our budget's passed in the first time 4 years in a row. Not many towns can say that. If you look at our neighbors, they're all in the second or third rendition of the budget right now. So we try to do things right. But unfortunately, I'm fighting with Hartford all the time on what are you doing to our rural town? We're trying to do the right thing financially and fiscally, but you keep putting more and more on our backs. So the budget just passed the House of Representatives yesterday. The Senate voted on it today. The governor signs it tomorrow. I'll have to see how that affects our town. But everything from early voting to additional veterans awards to car taxes, they dictate. So would you say what they're doing for us? Not a lot. They're telling us what they can do to us. And this 830G thing they came out with a while back, which they said, you might not want affordable housing because nobody wants it in their backyard, so we're going to force you to take it. And we're going to say to builders, we're going to make this so easy. You just go in, you don't have to pay any attention to the zoning laws. You buy the property and you build whatever you want, and the town can't say anything unless we have 10% or more. That's the number. Some people think it's a fictitious number, but that's the number we're supposed to have in order to say, no, you can't do that. Unless we can prove that there's a hardship. I mentioned that 4-story
Right,
building.
there are things that we can say to fight it, correct?
Right. There's got to be things that are legitimate, not just it's not going to look nice. It's
Right, there's wetlands.
it's got to be something that's, yes, exactly. And I think, as Mark said before I left, it's always better to have a project that you control versus one you can't control. And that's all we're looking to do, is find a project that we might be able to control. And as Nicole said, this is way down the road. It's early stages. And I hope that we see all of you again the next time we talk about this. We're going to go through a process. At any time that process can end, we're going to go through a process which can't end unless you all have a chance to vote on it. It doesn't end at the Board of Selectmen table. It ends in a town meeting or a referendum.
And then, well, I'll talk all night, but so we have that small amount of town land that's apparently really hard to build on. Is there land that is state-owned versus not privately owned that we could use instead?
The state, that's a good question. And from what I've heard, the state is not one to give up state-owned land.
I mean, they're the ones telling us to build it. Why, like, hey, help us out.
So there is state-owned land in town that you could ask the state about. There's some near the fire department. There is state-owned land, and it's not. And I think we should say, it's not the state saying you have to build it. They're saying you have to have that in your town. What the Affordable Housing Committee is saying is let's us be the ones that say what we want and propose it compared to a contractor coming in, a developer coming in and just putting in whatever they want with no say. And if you paid attention recently, you'll see HB 5002 just got passed, which takes more zoning control away from the town.
They can take a commercial property.
And they can do commercial, they can look at commercial properties now. That just passed.
I might want that more than.
So this is.
Condos in my backyard.
But
Sorry,
that
commercial
means they could
property.
take the shell and make that the same thing. So it's just that Affordable Housing Committee is trying to say, hey, what makes sense for our community compared to what a developer might want to come in and just throw up four-story building? Because right now our zoning doesn't allow that, but they can bypass those things. I'm not saying this is the right parcel, but I'm saying this is why affordable housing is trying to come up with ideas so developers don't. So the state's saying you need, well, they always say, so the state came down, and I'll always bring this up, and gave a presentation on affordable housing probably 6-7 years ago, and they did a great job. But they also brought up that 10% was made back in the 90s. It was an arbitrary number. They're trying to they've been trying to increase that recently.
This is not going to be the last project.
You're right.
This is the beginning.
But what we're saying is, hey, what other parcels might be out there? So if it's state, maybe affordable housing can look into that. But this is what they've come to so far to try to minimize the impact of developers coming. And like we've said the whole time, it's such an initial stage. It's got so many steps. It's got so many different designs that could happen too. And public input is so important in these things, because we certainly don't want to push something that the community isn't in favor of, that the board's not totally in favor of on different aspects of it. But we also have to really address, where does it belong? Because I'm looking at Marianne Richter in the back here, who's been in Kinson on affordable housing for as long as I can remember being involved in town. And I do remember the Winnechaug property, and I wasn't in favor of that, because we said, look, it should be somewhere where there's public transportation available, should be near a main road. So when this came forward, we say, okay, well, it meets that criteria. Now, does it meet the other issues? That's to be determined as
they're
we go
making the
through
argument
that.
because they don't
Right.
want it built. Like there's no public transportation in town, as far as I'm aware. Like,
Well, there the seat bus up until July 31st or June 30th.
I've seen a lot of tractors. I've never seen a
But-
city
but-
bus coming through North.
But these are the things that we look at. So like any other property that we looked at or any other plan, it goes through the process, and we appreciate everybody that comes out. And like Nicole said, we're not immune to what happens on Facebook or any social media. We see the comments, we see the public interaction, and we want to hear from you. So that's why,
I
also
think my
that's
point
why,
is not to pile on our volunteers that are doing the best they can. It's the leaders of our town to say, hey, let's get this number down, see what we can do to get this 10% down as small as possible, or try to communicate with the state so that we are not encroaching on our own land with something imposed on us by the state.
so I can say that, we sign checks as selectmen, so we're in town hall on a regular basis to sign those. But once a week, Bob's meeting with Representative Howard, talking about some of these concerns, trying to get them up to Hartford to make a change on some of these things, try to get more funding for us to look at other options. So we are doing our part, and we can all only do that together. So that takes the community to reach out. That takes everyone to reach out and say, hey, we need to do what's right for North Stonington, and 10% might not be that number for North Stonington, or maybe it's 5%. Maybe it's what fits in the community, but still provides affordable housing that people don't have to leave town. I've always said, I feel bad for our seniors that live here, grow up here, and then when they don't have a place to go, we don't have anything for them. Unfortunately, then you'll hear that senior housing doesn't get the same funding as it with age restrictions. So that puts a damper on my plan of saying, hey, let's start with a senior living area for affordable housing, but then we can't get funding for it. It's a vicious circle, but public input is the number one priority for us.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this doesn't, it could solve some of the issues, but it doesn't guarantee, like your friend, there's no guarantee that she's going to get this apartment. There's only so many apartments. Oh, there's a lot more people in town. Like, it doesn't really solve that problem of people, getting older and not being able to maintain their homes. It just solves that 10% problem. It doesn't really solve that problem, in my opinion. And then it also, if we're building it as condos, I was surprised to hear you say that we chose condos because then you could make as much as you want after you get the house. It just kind of, if we're going to build affordable housing, let's keep it for people that need it because they can't afford anywhere else. If you get to a point where you can afford something else, get out of the way so someone else who needs the affordable housing can live there, in my opinion. And I'll end it there. So I don't think it's a good idea to build a house that you could buy cheap and then make a lot of money after.
All right, I'll just address that last point first. I don't disagree with you. And hopefully if somebody decides to make $1 million after the year after they buy it, they say, you know what, now I can afford a house and I'm going to get me a house. I don't want to live in this condo forever. What I'm saying is you don't have to reevaluate their income every year. And if they make $10 more than the cutoff, they have to move. That's what I'm saying. We are encouraging people to better themselves, to make their situation better so that they can afford. Now, a couple other points that you brought up, and I would like to address those. Our committee has been tasked with finding opportunities for affordable housing. This may not be it, but we were tasked to find them, to research them, and to bring them to the board. And that's what we have done. And we are grateful for your input. I was grateful at our last meeting. You guys had great comments, great thoughts, and I took them all to heart. But I was still tasked with doing this feasibility study and bringing a report back to the Board of Selectmen, which I have done. And we are not limited to this. We have been focused on this because we felt that this feasibility study would take up our time right now. But we have not stopped looking for other opportunities. And if you have one, please bring it to us and let us know so that we can do a study on that. I have no idea.
Reverted back to the family who donated the land.
Okay. That's all I have right now.
Are you awake, Brian?
Brian, yep.
Well, I'm part of this affordable housing committee. And I'm a little disappointed I didn't get to say something earlier. They probably would have answered a lot of questions. This affordable housing thing came down from the state in 1990 to all the towns in Connecticut, which Connecticut has 169 towns. There's 138 towns, I believe, that have not been able to meet the 10% imaginary number that the state gave us. And we are one of them. A lot of the towns are small towns, just like us. I believe we got 28 affordable housings now. 29. But CHFA, if a person gets a loan from CHFA, a first-time home buyer, that counts toward your affordable housing. And I believe a lot of those houses are CHFA loans. I'm kind of like the black sheep of the Affordable Housing Committee, because I'm on your side. I moved here. Oh, I didn't. My mother and father bought a place when I was 5 years old. And I didn't grow up because I don't plan on doing that, but I got older. When my mother and father died, I bought their place. I had to make sacrifices. People that own a house know you got to make a sacrifice. You got to keep it in your head. You got to save money. You got to go without. I'm still driving the same truck I drove 20 years ago. That's what I'm talking about. The state of Connecticut says, oh, we'll make this, all towns got to have 10. Well, all towns, it does not, 830 does not fit. One law does not fit every town, and it's proven already because of what I just said about 138 towns can't do it. So what's the state of Connecticut do? Now they got another bill, which all it's got to be now is the governor to sign it, which is, and Brett mentioned it, the HB 5002, which will take this right out of our hands, which, as far as I'm concerned, we ought to opt right out of it. What will it do to us? It'll make our town get less money from the state. We do get some money from the state. I believe what I saw today with that budget, the school's still going to get their money. And I believe it was the town of North Stonington's going to get, I'm not sure what the increase was like 2,300 or something like that. Peanuts, really, according to what the state has stacked away. I remember that land when that pond there, people used to go and skate on it. It was clear enough. I go over to Chucky's and I look over that wall. It looks like, I don't even think a frog wants to live there anymore. I'd like to know what the Conservation Commission would say if they would investigate it and look if there's any special critters in there that shouldn't be disturbed. The Wetlands Commission, I'm sure they would have something to say because you put septic in there. I don't want to be responsible for a septic if it breaks on that land. That's going to cost all of us. They're going to reach in our pockets and say, oh, guess what? We got a problem. Well, water, as far as I know, water goes downhill. You put more water on there, yeah, you might solve the problem here. Coming down here, it's going to go somewhere. It's been brought up about the traffic congestion. Those two driveways would be coming just before Chucky's, before you get to that light. So I think there's a lot wrong with the plan. I know the members I'm on with, they're probably ready to throw things at me, but that's okay. Next meeting, I'm sure we're going to have a good conversation. The new law is going to bring, especially, and I got a feeling they're going to pass it because it's that whole bill that they just put out is being passed by parties. Democrat Party, and I don't like to get into that, controls what's going on with the state right now. And they all think it's wonderful. Most of them are on the other side of this state. They don't know about our town. The people on our zoning board know about this town and what we have here. But they're saying the developer could bypass that later on. So if anybody really wants to look into that bill, because I could stand up here all night. I've been reading it. I've been making comments. I wrote to the governor today to veto that bill. Of course, he ain't going to listen to me. Who the hell am I? I'm the black sheep of the Affordable Housing Committee. Anybody wants to check it out, you check out Connecticut 169 Strong. And they will give you a readout of that bill. It will tell you what's in there. And it's very surprising. And if the state of Connecticut, this is my biggest thing I think of, the state of Connecticut tells us that we got to have a certain amount of affordable housing, which they plan on this fair share is going up. I believe it's going to be almost 18%. But we haven't been able to do it since 1990. As of right, what that means is we won't have any public hearings when there's a proposal on the board. The parking will be out. A developer won't even have to put in parking because they're talking about they can park on a street. You can't park on Mystic Road. So that's what I'm saying. They don't understand. Only our town does. And that's why I'm saying, and I already talked to Bob a little bit about it. If they still have the opt-out and they don't repeal that part of it, I think our town ought to really consider that. But as far as this one, I say no, because I'm just like you. I own land up on Grindstone, and I don't want to have a lot of, I like my privacy. I still pee off my porch.
Too much information, Brian.
Well, maybe they do, but I mean, I'm just saying, they bought the places, and I'm sorry about your water problem. You're always gonna have a water problem, because I remember when that was all built, it was a swamp. It was very, very, very wet. And that land was given to the town because the developer at that time didn't believe he was either turned down or didn't believe he could build houses on that land anymore. And with Ledge Light being the head of the thing, they go to engineered systems, which you blast on a rock and put in an engineered system. So anyways, that's why I'm not for it. And I'm hoping the selectmen take some consideration in what I said. And I know I'll be talking to you, Bob, again. And I'll check in more about the opt-out, because I think this is a terrible thing what the state of Connecticut is doing to our towns. And I think it's time we all stand together and tell them, no. We got 138 towns that can, I bet, would stand with us. And that may just change what they're thinking about in Hartford instead of the big cities. And they have made, what is it, 5 sanctuary cities. So we all think that, oh, it'd be great to have affordable housing for our kids and our parents. Let's just stop the state from saying all the cities that have all the, whatever they are, they're too full. All you towns are going to take a certain amount of them people and bring them to your town. No. This town has always been, as far as I know, worked just like, when I asked my father, how do I get a house? He said, you make sacrifices. You have to maybe work 2 jobs. You have to do what you got to do and keep it in your mind, your goal at the end. And that's what I say. Connecticut also, like I said, CHFA, they have RAP, rental assistant programs for people that need help paying rent. They have a lot of those programs that they've put money into. And that's what I'm saying. We need to check that all out. That's what I believe our Affordable Housing Committee should be doing, and our whole town should be doing. I think I said pretty much what I want to say. And hopefully I gave you some information about how this affordable housing thing works and how not my backyard. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. Amy?
I'm going to skip most of mine because it's pretty repetitive, but I do want to bring attention to the fact that on May 17th and 22nd, the street drain directly in front of my house overflowed after heavy rainfall, which is a frequent occurrence. We did discuss that. And I'm not familiar with the whole process. I've tried to spend a lot of time this week trying to understand how it works. So I might not be discussing the correct thing at the right hole I don't go. So I'm gonna, I was trying to do my best to keep an open mind. I've also spent a lot of time reflecting on the challenges of living here. One of my first heartbreaks was the unexpected cost of installing a new septic, which was around $45,000, and the added cost of an engineer for $3,000, which is the cheapest one I could find. This was especially difficult because this purchase was based on what was affordable for us at the time, and I had already experienced the cost of a home beyond my means. To make matters worse, in 2019, we had a house fire, which the new rebuild was full of shortcuts. Since I deal with persistent mold and rust, which is existing on my main floor that did not exist before the house fire. Despite my efforts of constant cleaning, running the dehumidifier, running the bathroom vents, the mold is relentless. It brings that to my primary concern. I feel that the added cost of drainage and the septic system for a build in this area, there might be compromises made elsewhere in the construction. This could result in mold being a major issue long-term for all the residents if it is not dealt with accordingly, or if the ventilation, even to code, does not work correctly. I understand the financial pressures of owning a home and the improvements that come along, but it is discouraging to face constant repairs in a new home, like leaking pipes, improper stalled shelves, and faulty windows. I've worked for McQuaid's for 29 years and often work 6 days a week to support my family. I share this because I hope that whoever qualifies for the affordable housing is not put into a similar situation of unforeseen spending, regardless of where the project is approved. My house went through the perk test. It had a new engineered system put in. There was grading done, and I still have stagnant water that sits behind my house. So I cannot always trust that when the town is saying that they're going to do their best to say it won't hurt or it might help us, that I can trust that, because I am the pure example of going through all those measures and still dealing with water constantly. I am that house that has like two sub pumps that run 24 hours a day, even in the summer. I know this is not a build in a basement, but the water that I deal with and the mold is a constant battle, and it's unaffordable sometimes to even maintain the amount of dehumidifiers, the cleaning that I have to do. It's it's pretty much overtaken our lives. So that's all.
Thank you.
Last time I promised. I'm sorry. Last time I promised. First thing, when this land was deeded for development, was that before or after the town had recognized that there was a drainage problem in Meadowwood? All right, so they deeded it developable after they knew there was a problem. Okay, so we have a problem there. I understand. I understand that, but we have a problem with the town there. Because now we've deeded something that we recognize there's a problem, and we're going to further potentially put that burden on the people that live adjacent to it. How many acres is this? So that's an 8-acre lot that's being built on less than 5. What is the percentage of North Stonington residents that own more than 8 acres?
I have no idea, John.
Because I'm, without being politically identified, I am a capitalist. And one of the things that I've always had a problem is whenever governments say we're going to control something, because normally they don't. So, this, aside the fact that a lot of this is not in my backyard, I have no problem with affordable housing. It just has to go where it's feasible. This is not feasible. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I think I'm last. I'm Nick Hughes. I'm from 155 Tom Wheeler. I was originally in Cedar Ridge, but I grew up in town. My grandfather Ray is on 8. Always had a water problem. Totally for the affordable housing. But I didn't choose and move my wife out of Rhode Island because North Stonington was affordable. There was schools, the community, connectedness, the privacy, not everybody jammed in one hole. My wife and I didn't spend years of our lives overseas deployed to say, we're just going to try to find something really affordable because we're in the service. We saved our money. We wanted to come to North Stonington. Our kids go to school here. And the idea is great. It's great for new families, great for separating veterans, great for people who want to get a jump on something. But this site in particular is packed and everybody uses the field all the time. My grandfather voluntarily has been mowing that field since what, the 80s. Yeah, longer than I've been alive, and I'm turning 36. So, I mean, you're really impacting a lot of people trying to shove something in this spot because it checks a bunch of wickets. I think we need to reevaluate, and there's got to be something else that can be done, or it can be shrunk. Because if 138 other towns aren't getting their 10% number, you know, what's it costing them for not having that either? Like I said, I didn't choose North Stonington because it was cheap. I chose North Stonington because it was good and rural and tight and a strong community. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Bob Gay. I live on Jeremy Hill Road. First generation here in town. Wife and I moved here in '76, lived for 8 years in Kingswood, and then built up on Jeremy Hill Road. My background is I'm a licensed professional engineer, retired. I worked here in town for the Planning and Zoning Committee for a number of years, reviewing their zoning plans, as well as I had my own business as a licensed professional engineer doing site planning and engineered septic plans for about 20 years. I now golf full time. My wife leave. she didn't hear that. I don't want to address, I could address, but I'm not going to address the personal feelings that everyone has about this, but I'd like to address maybe a couple technical issues. And granted, I've only looked at this plan since 6/25. I agree with topography. There's no topography on the drawing. Maybe you should take a note and say, hey, we want to see something about topography. The second thing is, I just pulled up quickly the Connecticut septic system regulations, which design the engineered septic systems. And to me, it looks like the tank sizes that they're proposing are far undersized for multifamily units. And also, I think a big factor that maybe you need to do early in the whole thing, maybe in their fourth hole of work, is send the plans to the Department of Public Health. Because if you have a flow of septic system over 2,000 gallons per day, the requirement is that Department of Public Health, that's in Hartford, has to review it and put their stamp of approval. I know you had Ledgelight. I've worked with Ledgelight for a number of years, and they're a great group to work with. I'm just saying, that's the requirements.
Okay, thank you.
So just technical things should be looked closely at these plans.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other comment? If there's no other comment, we're going to close this agenda item. As I said, we will let you know the next time we're going to speak about this. You'll see it on our agenda, but we'll make sure we post it on social media and on our webpage. So there should be no surprises. If you find out that we had a secret meeting somehow, you know where I work. My doors are open. You can come down and talk to me about it, but I don't think it'll happen. All right, so we're going to move. You're all welcome to stay, but we're going to move to agenda meeting number 9. So we're going to look at that call. This is a call for a town meeting that's going to be coming up, proposed on June 23rd. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read it. Nicole and Brett, I'll read the call. We decide whether this is what we want to do or not. Basically, this is for the excavator. So warning is hereby given to the electors of Nozick, entitled to vote at town meetings of the town of North Stonington, that a special town meeting shall be held at the following location at the date and time indicated for the purposes of transacting the business set forth below. North Stonington Education Center, Media Center, 298 Norwich Wesley Road, and via Zoom. The Zoom link is there. The meeting ID is there. June 23rd, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. Only those attending the meeting in person will be able to vote. The meeting will be available for comment and viewing through Zoom and the link above, but those attending virtually will not be able to vote All supporting documentation will be available to the town on the town website, which is the www.northstoningtonct.gov. Question 1. Shall the town of North Stonington approve an appropriation of funds for the undersigned, from the undesignated fund in the amount not to exceed $130,000 for the purchase of a new excavator to assist in the future town road work? Board of Selectmen, Brett Mastriani, Robert Carlson, and Nicole Porter. That's it. So I'll entertain a motion to.
So moved.
There's nothing. Can we discuss? I'll second.
Okay, so it's moved in second. Any discussion?
There's nothing else that we can drum up to put in. that?
There's nothing. We'll be doing something in the fall. If this could wait, if we weren't doing so much road work, I would have put this off to the fall where we would have done LoSiP funding and the $1 million resolution and so on. We'll still have that probably in November, Nicole, but this couldn't wait because of the work
Yeah,
that's
no,
lined
I
up.
understand.
We did just get that steep grant, which is going to have to be appropriated, but I have to go to the Board of Finance first.
Yeah.
And we couldn't get fitted in time, so. John, do you want to discuss, you have a discussion?
You guys want to discuss first or?
No, that was my only question.
Where was this at budget time?
So we talked about this well before the budget, probably multiple meetings, Sean, I'd say maybe 4 or 5 meetings it was discussed. What we're waiting for is the money to come in from the auction. We auctioned off $93,000 worth of older town equipment, which we're putting toward this, as well as after the fair, the old excavator will be auctioned off, and Alan's assuming we're going to get somewhere around 10,000. So the new excavator is going to be somewhere in that $123,000, we believe, and we'll have $103,000 through selling of old merchandise. So it's about a $20,000 net. We did talk about this multiple times before the budget. We even talked about it during the budget, and we knew that we wanted to wait for our final figure on the auction. We talked to the Board of Finance about it and told them this is what we were doing, and they all agreed, since we're going to be putting all the money towards this from the auction, then we really weren't looking for $130,000 of new money. It was, most of it was coming from the auction.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. It was just a timing piece, Sean. That's all the way it happened. Any other discussion? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, so the meeting will be on June 23rd. I'll make sure.
I'm not here.
That's
I'm on
okay.
vacation.
That's okay. She's not here either. We can still do it. We got 2 of us.
Okay.
But thank you. So, and it should be a quick town meeting anyway with 1 item.
Yeah.
I'll make sure it gets Antoinette. I do need you to sign it tonight though, which I forgot this last time. So I'll get it to Antoinette and she'll do the advertising for it. Yeah, I hate to have a town meeting for 1 item. I
I
agree.
know. That's what I was just.
2 things I didn't like about it, but unfortunately we didn't have a choice, was 1, it was so close to the budget and I would rather have it going through the budget. And then the second thing is that when we need it is now to start putting in new culverts and basins. I mean, we just heard 2 hours of discussion about water. So, and Alan is probably the foreman that we've not had in a long time that concentrates on piping and water. He's already been to Kingswood multiple times in the last month or so. So, all right, so that's that. Traffic Commission, there's something in your packet, the Traffic Commission Subcommittee. So, we haven't used this much in the last year or so. Unfortunately, the chairman at the time, it got ill and he had to resign. I did reach out to the existing members, which is not counting Jason McCarthy, Alan Ladd, and Alex Kono, because they all kind of work for the town, but Britt Tiller and Lori Sosha, they both indicated they would like to get back involved with the Traffic Commission. The only reason I even brought this up is I've been getting a lot of calls on traffic, whether it be speeding and you name it. It's speed humps, signs, speed signs. What can we do to monitor it? Stop signs. And we had a commission. Why not get it activated again? So the selectmen are getting this. It's an advisory committee to us, so we get more feedback. So I'd like to get this going again. There's nothing we have to do except for me to find some other members to it, possibly. But I do have 5 if Jason, Alex, and Alan attend. But this came up because the latest call I had was on Jeremy Hill Road, again, about speeding. And there's neighbors that want to lower the speed from whatever the speed is now down to 10 miles an hour lower. I'm not sure what the speed is on that road, but anyway.
How
So
many
isn't
more-
it?
How many more members do we have to find?
Well, there was 6 before, and one stepped off because he was ill. So we still have 5. So I think we probably have enough members. But all I'm looking to do is have them have a meeting, vote a chair, a new chair, would try to be Brett or Lori. And then if we can find another member, that would be great. But just when these calls come in and when you can go onto our website, you can ask the question of this traffic committee or tell about a concern, then they can bring it to us. But I'm fielding these calls in the office since almost daily. Again, this one is speeding on Jeremy Hill, and why not have the traffic commission look at it? I just dealt with one. I'm still dealing with one on Town Wheeler Road, and it seems like every time we turn around, there's an issue on one of our roads. So there's really no action we have to take. I just wanted to remind you we did have a committee. I'm trying to get it moving again, and I wanted to bring up that the Jeremy Hill Road situation where a resident had reached out to me.
It's not party specific, right? As
No.
far as-
Well, so what's interesting is it's minority representation that it mentions. So my question is, I think we need to, just so we know going forward, Antoinette, if she can find out. So usually minority representation matters on all members of a voting board. So that would mean the resident state trooper, the highway foreman, unless they're just advising the board, they're not voting members of the board to move
So-
things forward. So that's interesting that we have that minority representation applies. So I don't think it could just apply to the 3 community members. I think it has to apply to everybody on that committee. So I would just like for us to look into that as
But
we
what are
move
they
that
voting
forward.
on? Why they're advisory to the Board of Selectmen, so what power do they have to vote?
So what I'm saying, but if it's,
You said a voting board, they're not voting.
well, if they're voting to recommend something, then usually they vote to move something forward, like affordable housing is an appointed advisory board. They don't just move something forward with one person saying they want to move that recommendation forward. I'm just saying we should have clarification on that so we don't violate any state statute.
Okay, so whoever's on there now, they've been on since the beginning. I can find out well, independent is one and unaffiliated is the other, right? So does it really matter? If it's a Republican or a Democrat, it doesn't matter, correct?
So you're missing my point on it. So I don't think that just applies to the members from the community,
Well, the other 3 members don't live in the community.
right? But they're members of the
So I'm
board.
guessing they must be advisory because they don't live in the community. So what voting rights would they have?
Okay, so
anyway?
I just want to clear if we can get clarification on that. I don't have a problem with it. I just want to make sure we're following state statute.
Okay, thank you. All right, so there was really no action to be taken. There is on the next one, on tax refunds.
So I'll make a motion to approve tax refunds totaling $270.61, broken up by Kim Blevin, Christopher Storer, and Brian Young.
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, opposed? But did you say I didn't hear you?
I did.
Okay, 3-0. Thank you. Old business, there's no old business right now, except for we'll try to find somebody maybe to be on the traffic commission. Is there any public comment of anyone who's left in the room? Yes.
I just wanted to mention that land that is being proposed there is, what they call it, it's commercial vacant land is what it's called down at the town hall. Don't ask me what it means, but when it says commercial, that land is worth, I think it said $116,500. So it's valuable to the town. Just want to let you know.
It's taxable? It's, would you say it's taxable?
No, well, it's not taxable, but it's worth that much. So
Oh,
we-
okay. You're saying what the value is?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, I mean, anytime land is given away, Some people say, oh, that land's worth nothing. No, 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 no. Land is valuable.
So just a quick question on everything we just heard, who in their right mind would buy it? Who would buy it with everything we just heard?
Well, if the town wanted to sell it, they would advertise it, I would think, as commercial vacant land.
Okay.
They could probably put a Dairy Queen on there.
Okay. Thank you. I understand your point. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other public comment? If not, we're going to vote to go to executive session, which I'm going to have to ask you all to leave, even though you just walked here. I'm sorry.
Gary, you just walked from home?
No, I'm serious. Unless you have a comment, you can make a comment before you can make a comment if you'd like before we go to executive session.
Will, I just wanted to tell you did a nice job.
So how do we know you can go back in the room and throw us out of this great room? Town's fun.
What do you mean, how do you know?
You know, with executive session.
You can stand out in the hallway and we'll call you back when we're done.
But we don't have any, there's nothing really on the agenda after the executives, we come out of executive session.
That's why this,
So if you want to, do you want to make a public comment?
because now would be the time. Because after executive session, we're just going to say our next meeting is on this date, we're going to adjourn.
You sure, Gary? You walked all the way over here.
Should have started the walk a little earlier.
Putting more crap in the land.
You don't have to shut us up.
So I'll make a motion to go into executive session for the administration and finance officer performance review and invite Suzanne into that meeting.
I'll second.
Great, second. Okay, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're in executive session. So talking to Suzanne.
Your mic's not on.
Okay, so out of executive session, anyone that might have waited, thank you so much. Our next Board of Selectmen meeting is June 17th. However, we do have a tri-board meeting on June 9th. Entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we're adjourned tonight. All those in favor say